But let's move on into our last segment, Mark, and we're kind of going back into something that is not foreign to us. I mean, we've been doing rankings, so we haven't really been doing news stories here on the onside kick, but with the rankings only going to 16, decided we needed a little something to supplement that time, and we're taking a look today at, to me, it was between one of two things. It was either talk about T.O. saying that he could play at 44, and if a team should go ahead and invite him to training camp, or talk about something a little bit more serious in the Earl Thomas trade discussions for this season. And just to kind of set everything up in case you guys had forgotten, at the draft, apparently the Seahawks were looking to deal Earl Thomas if they could get a first-round pick, a second-round pick for him, and there was a reported trade with the Dallas Cowboys that was offered. Dallas called, they offered the trade, Seahawks never called them back, so we never got to see what that trade would have been. I think they said it was a Dallas second-round pick. But the thing I want to ask you, Mark, is Earl Thomas, Seahawks have kind of dove into trade discussions earlier with him. He's a free agent at the end of the year. Does Earl Thomas, or do the Seahawks trade Earl Thomas this season?
And part of the thing that a lot of people are talking about is the fact that Earl Thomas not showing up to the OTAs, the voluntary workouts.
Well, he wants $11 million as his annual salary.
Me too.
So there's that too.
I would love it.
He wants a little bit of some moolah from the Seahawks if he's going to re-sign.
You know, you don't necessarily blame him, but here's the thing with the Seahawks, and the thing that I think a guy like Earl Thomas needs to look at is they've already kind of said that, yeah, you defensive guys, it was fun, but we're not paying you.
Yeah.
You know, and Earl Thomas is 29, so it's not like he is, that old in football standards. He's still playing at a very high level. He's still doing, great things to lead a defense, to lead a team. But I kind of don't think they're going to pay him. I don't think they're going to necessarily trade him, though. I would be a little surprised about that, because if that didn't work on that draft day, if they were not willing to pick that phone call or pick up that phone and return that call,
that trade,
then I think that was the time to do it. This is probably not going to happen at this point, unless the Seahawks really have a bad year and then maybe a little bit later in the season. But right now, I don't see it happening. It's too late.
The first thing I think about is whenever we talk trades in the NFL, my first reaction is to say no. Like, usually when it comes to, when we get to the actual season, take draft out of it. Like, draft, we see trades all over the place. But once we get to the actual season, no one trades. Like, it's one of the things where me and you always joke around, where we get to the trade deadline. It's like, oh, should we talk about the trade deadline? Not really, because no one's going to get traded. We can talk about people moving, but no one's going to get traded. Like, it's not like, I feel like baseball is the most activity. Hockey is the second most activity. Basketball is the third most activity. And then there's football. Like, no one gets traded at the trade deadline in football. So for me, I don't think that Earl Thomas is going to get traded this year. If I had to put my money on it, I would say that he plays out this season. At the end of the year, hey, I want $11 million. The Seahawks go, thanks, but no thanks, and they let him walk.
Yeah.
But there's always something in the back of my head that if, let's say, the Cowboys, I'll throw them out because they offered before. Let's say they get some injuries on defense, get some injuries to that secondary. Do these talks resurface and the Seahawks closer to the deadline think about it and pull that trigger?
It's certainly possible. I mean, they've already had some kind of rumors out there that the Cowboys are still interested in him, and they still are going for it. Yeah, I agree with you. Why not? Especially a team like the Cowboys that really could use a great safety weapon like Earl Thomas for sure. There's no reason not to go for it. And that's a good team that will only be kind of that much closer to being that true Super Bowl contender with him. Honestly, though, when I'm thinking about it, I really can't think of another team that's going to make a trade for him and then have to re-sign them themselves. I think about the teams that are those Super Bowl contenders right now and I'm thinking which one of these teams absolutely is devoid of defense, a team that has to go and make this splash. And I don't think I have somebody. Besides the Dallas Cowboys, I don't know that I can think of somebody who needs to do it at that 1-year rental price where it's going to be worth a second-round pick to you, and then you have to go re-sign him yourself. And he's asking for $11 million.
Well, the Cowboys, that's why to me, if there's any team that's going to do that, it's the Cowboys. Like, look at this. The Cowboys took I'm going to say a flyer. They signed Greg Hardy for a year after he got released from Carolina. That was the year when we did the whole weekly previews that Sean would basically, for the preview, say F Dallas, and that would be the entire preview because of our stance on Greg Hardy and what he did. But, I mean, they've done it in the past where Jerry Jones has mostly free agents. I'm going to dish out the money for you, even if I'm bringing you in for a year to help this defense and give for that, Greg Hardy, your pass rush talents to help us win games. So, for me, I feel like where the Cowboys are, that is why this trade would work, is because their MO is, I don't care if I'm only using you for a year, Earl Thomas.
Yeah.
If you help us win this division, if you help us get back to the playoffs, then I can see them making that deal, because the Cowboys don't really, their ownership doesn't really think about long-term in that sense.
Definitely.
They think about what's going to help me this year, and they might be pressing a little bit because the Eagles won the Super Bowl.
It's possible. The only other thing that maybe somebody could try and convince me for, and I say maybe I'm emphasizing maybe, the Green Bay Packers.
All right.
Because of the fact that they made a point this year to say, we are helping the defensive backs. I don't necessarily know that they've got room, but Earl Thomas over Josh Jones, I think I'd take that. I don't know about over Clinton Dix.
But are they going to be the team, are the Packers going to be the team that wants to...
They don't make big moves.
They don't make big moves. However...
But they don't need that second-round pick.
Let's put it this way. We've said, the Packers don't make big moves, but they kind of did make a big move with the Cleveland Browns this offseason, where not only did they take in Deshaun Kaiser, they moved Demarius Randall.
Yep.
That was when that happened, I was like, whoa, holy crap. They got rid of Demarius Randall. And I mean, for me, the only reason why I necessarily don't see that trade happening is because Earl Thomas plays the free safety for the Seahawks, and that's Clinton Dix territory, unless you feel like either one of those guys could move over to strong safety.
And the fact as well that Josh Jones was a last year's draft pick at the second round. So that would basically be them giving up on him.
Yeah, I just don't see that happen.
That's why I was saying the strong maybe, but the only other team you could convince me is a team that is ready to make a splash, and Earl Thomas is that one. Because I do think Earl Thomas, I'll take him over Jones for sure.
Well,
but it's not the best fit, and it's just not likely that a team like the Green Bay Packers would do that. But hey, it's a Super Bowl contender every single year who has said defensive backs need to be better this year.
I also feel like the Richard Sherman, how that all played out, is foretelling or foreshadowing on what to expect here.
Yeah.
Because with Richard Sherman, they didn't move him, mainly because, let's be honest, with Richard Sherman, I ain't going to move you.
You're good.
I'd rather have you play for me and not hurt me than trade you somewhere else and the possibility of you playing me someday.
Although now you got to play him twice a year. You
Now
could have ensured that it was someone you don't get to see twice a year.
Well, I mean, at the end of the year, he could have left and went to the 49ers
But he probably would have gotten
anyways.
paid by the team willing to trade for him.
But that's another thing. He went to San Francisco, and he's like, one of the main reasons I came here is I get to play you guys twice a year, and I'm going to beat you twice a year.
Exactly.
But Earl Thomas isn't the only one that's going to be in this situation, because I'm looking at contracts right now for Seattle. Earl Thomas at the end of this year wants $11 million. He ain't going to get that $11 million. I think what's going to happen is, I'll give the answer right now. He doesn't get traded. He plays out the full year if he's healthy with the Seattle Seahawks. Sayonara, you're gone at the end of the year. Then they have two other contracts on the defense that they also have to think about. You mentioned Earl Thomas, 29. They have Cam Chancellor, who is 30, who, yeah, he's got 2019 and 2020, but that's a contract that is going to be coming up. Do they think about moving him in the next 2 years, or do we see a similar thing play out these next years? 2020 happens, bye-bye at the end of the year. Then they also have Bobby Wagner, which they did have a potential out last year, didn't take it. I mean, Bobby Wagner only 27, so he is a little bit younger, but he's got this year and next year, then he's a free agent. So, I mean, to me, I want to know, and we mentioned this defense in our rankings, I really want to see what happens with this defense, because it's kind of, I've heard people it was either on NFL Live or on the Waddle and Sylvie ESPN radio talking about defenses. And they brought in the Denver Broncos defense as the example. Like, oh, right now you're good, but these defenses, because of age, because it's hard to keep them together with money, these great defenses have a short shelf life. And we are seeing the end of that shelf life for the Seahawks, to where it's impossible to keep these contracts together. They're all getting old, and once you get older, it's harder to play that defense. It's not like quarterback where, I mean, I'll bring Terrell Owens in, where he was talking to the Herd about playing, and he goes, the Herd goes, you're crazy. You're crazy for thinking you could play at 44. And T.O. actually had a good response. He goes, you only think that because it's never happened. A wide receiver hasn't come in at 44 and played. He goes, the only reason you say that about Tom Brady when Tom Brady says he can play the 45 is because you've seen him play at the levels he's at. Plus, playing the quarterback that he does is a lot different than playing the wide receiver position or the free safety position. So, getting back to the Seahawks, though, I feel like this defense has hit its shelf life, and that's why we're seeing all these draft picks coming in, because we're going to infuse
Well, we knew
this
it was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the same thing that...
Well, we've been talking about this for years.
Yeah, in 3 or 4 years, we're going to see it with the Eagles and with the Rams, and then eventually with the Chicago Bears, because that's a young team as well.
We're going to see it soon with the Vikings, maybe.
That Vikings defense, probably in about 2 years, is going to be torn apart because of money.
I wouldn't say torn apart, but, I mean, there will be guys that leave.
You can only pay so many people.
Yeah, there will be guys that leave.
And that's exactly what we said with the Seattle Seahawks, that they did such a great job drafting this young talent, and Russell Wilson was a huge part of that in being a great quarterback on a rookie deal as in later round or mid-round rookie deal. So you had such a huge advantage. Once you had to start paying people, anybody who thought about it knew it's not going to be as good of a defense. This defense will come apart. And hey, that's what the NFL is set up to be. The NFL is not set up for dynasties like the New England Patriots. That's not how the NFL is supposed to be. It's supposed to be, this team is good this year, and in 3 years they won't be good anymore. Then this team will be good. It is a league designed to constantly ebb and flow for teams to be good and bad and then middle ground and all over the place, because of that cap limit. That cap limit is set there to do exactly this, to make sure a team can't be the Golden State Warriors. To make sure that doesn't happen in this league. And I love it that way. It's great to see. It was great to see a team that be good like the Seattle Seahawks. It's great to see them come back down, and then other teams like the Eagles, like the Rams, like the Vikings. I don't want to see the Vikings, but it's nice to see those teams rise up and the Jacksonville Jaguars take their place.
Here's the thing I want to ask you, and this is getting a little bit away from Earl Thomas, but I want to ask it anyways, is we mentioned in our rankings, didn't really talk about it much, was the comments, I want to say it was by Cliff Averill, where he says basically the Super Bowl where Marshawn Lynch, they didn't run it on the 1 yard line. That was the one where it's like, hey, you know what? The locker room started to divide at that point. The thing I want to ask you is with Pete Carroll. Let me exactly look at when he came in exactly for the Seahawks. I'm going to pull that up really quick. So he came in 2010. He's been there for 8. Wow, this is going to be his 8th season.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
With the Seahawks. And this is with his playoff and Super Bowl. Let's see. He's been to, In that time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 playoffs. He's only missed it twice. And he's been to 2 Super Bowls back to back. 1-1 in both of those. The question I want to ask you, how much further do you think Pete Carroll will be the head coach of this team? Are we beginning to see not just the end of this defense, but the end of Pete Carroll as the Seahawks head coach?
To me, it really comes down to how he does with another group. Because he essentially came in and he had to build this back up, and he did a very good job at doing it. But he also had a little bit of advantage. He was just in the college world. He knew what a lot of those guys were like. He built this young team. Now this team is older. Can he build another team? I would say Pete Carroll's earned himself 4 or 5 years to do that. I think he's earned himself plenty of time. Now, if I am some fan of the Seahawks or someone in the organization, I want to see us get back to the NFC Championship game sometime very soon. You know, I don't want to be this team that's one and done out of the playoffs or anything like that. I want to say I think we're still good, and they are still a good team, so we should be able to still be competing. But I do think that he has this opportunity to build this other team, and I think he's doing fairly well with it so far. The question is just, is he going to be able to do it again? And if he can, he keeps going for a while. If he's not going to do it, then he'll probably will end up getting replaced.
Well, and the thing that really helped him his first year...
And he's also an older coach.
That's
relevant,
well, because he not only coached with the Patriots, he coached a while at USC.
Yep.
Now he's coached for a while in Seattle. The thing I was going to ask you, the thing that kind of helped him was, although his team went 7-9 in that first year, do you remember what happened in the playoffs that was the 2010 playoffs? I think it was 2011.
That was
the
beast mode.
Season. It was.
They beat
beast
the Saints.
Mode. So that was, and also I wish I still had the audio clip, because back in that day I was still in college doing college radio, and me and my co-host for that night, week before the wild card games, we were talking about this game, and I said, hey, you know what, I think don't count out the Seahawks. And he blatantly said, this was also the same year I made a bet with my other co-host that he said Jacksonville would make the playoffs. I said they wouldn't. Jacksonville missed a last-second kick against the Colts, which would have sent them to the playoffs. The bet was I got to shave his head on the air, which was great. The other one was with this game, my other co-host said, I don't see that happening. If the Seahawks win, I will shave my head and my eyebrows. I let him keep his eyebrows, but really...
So kind.
He should have shaved his eyebrows also. But that was the year they beat the Saints after being 7-9, getting a home game for that too, being a 7-9 team with a home game. And then they lose to the Bears. Bears go on to the NFC title game, and that's where you got to see Jay Cutler ride the bike that everyone likes to talk about.
That's right.
Where you guys lost to the Packers and see them win a Super Bowl.
Where his legs exploded.
Where his legs exploded. But any final thoughts you got? Because I kind of feel like we've gotten to the root of this. I think that we are seeing we have been seeing the beginning of the end for the Seahawks for a while. The beginning of the end was that Super Bowl. Because, yeah, it's a great run. You got to 2 Super Bowls. You knocked off one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the current NFL in Peyton Manning, with Tom Brady being number 1. But you couldn't knock off number 1 because your head coach didn't want to run the ball with your best asset in the backfield on the 1-yard line. Don't really know what was going on there still.
You wanted to surprise him.
That was the beginning of the end for this team. I feel like we're seeing it now. Richard Sherman gone. We'll see Earl Thomas gone via free agency. Then we'll see Bobby Wagner gone. Then we'll see Cam Chancellor gone. And eventually either A, Pete Carroll will leave on his own, or he will be fired and they will move on to the next coach. Any final thoughts before we end this podcast?
Only thing worth saying is, good on the Eagles. They got uninvited to the White House. It's for a funny thing for a team that not a single player on that team in the regular season or the playoffs knelt during the national anthem. Not a single one.
I thought they did.
Only in the preseason. And that player got cut.
I thought they had the...
I think they were an arm-in-arm team.
No, the thing I thought they did was, I thought they had, I can't remember his first name, I believe he was one of Howie Long's kid, where he had the one where one of his teammates knelt, they really ragged on him, and then the next game he had like his arm around his shoulder.
I believe that might have been what happened in the preseason, but my understanding, comments, feel free if we're wrong, my understanding is during the regular season and the playoffs, not a single one of their players did. I believe that they were an arm in arm or an arm above each other. Either way, with that being said, we have not talked about, and we're not going to probably talk about it now, the national anthem thing right now.
No.
But if you
if you want to hear about that, Brandon did a full video about it. And he did,
the only thing worth saying is this proves the point still of the NFL wants this to go away so badly. And they're failing miserably at making that happen. And part of that, of course, is because the president's going to tweet about it and he's going to uninvite the Philadelphia Eagles there. They weren't going to go anyways.
I found it. You're right. It was an arm-in-arm thing. It was long, but it was one of those. I can't remember who he had in front of him because at numbers, I don't memorize the Eagles'
it's not
numbers.
Your team. Yeah.
It was guy in front, fist up like this, long in the back with his hand on his shoulder, but they were standing.
And, and that's a team that did it for their own reason. It's only worth mentioning because I do think it's worth mentioning that the NFL is trying so hard to bury this. But
they seem to can't.
They can't. And honestly, if they had ignored it and they didn't make their policies, they didn't do whatever it was.
It just would have faded away.
But now it's still being talked about.
Which is... And the only thing I'll say, which could be a good thing, because keeping the spotlight on it, what all of this is, how this all started, isn't going away.
Which is good in that case for sure. But yeah, the NFL wants it buried, and the NFL is doing everything wrong to do that.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think about the Seattle Seahawks, about Earl Thomas. What's going to happen? Will he get traded? Is he going to leave at the end of the season? Do they give him the money? Like, you could have that thought, I guess. Do they give him the money at the end of the year? What's going to go on with the Seahawks? What do you think down below in the comment section? Also, a little housekeeping to end. Patreon.com/MostValuedPodcast. If you want to support us, that link is in the description. Also, if you want the shirt Mark is wearing, make sure to check out the store link in the description. You can also get it at MostValuedPodcast.com. Also, you can catch MVP each and every day. And then also, if you're on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, make sure to go give the Onside Kick a 5-star rating. And then also go and write a little something about what you liked about it, why other people should check us out. But thank you guys for watching on YouTube. Thank you guys for listening on podcast services around the world. And as always, have a good day, everybody.